Okay, shalom to everyone. I don't like to start with a joke, but since you're from England, are there any Irish here? Okay, it's an Irish joke, and it's one of my best jokes. It's from Belfast, in Northern Ireland. And if you understand the joke from Belfast, you understand the Middle East. Bless you. Father O'Malley is bashing the Protestants in his Catholic pulpit in Northern Ireland. And he gets a call from the Archbishop and says to him with his Irish accent, "Father O'Malley, I have been receiving reports you're bashing the Protestants. We are now working for peace in Northern Ireland. Is that clear? From now on you preach the gospel at the High Mass." So Father O'Malley gets up in his Catholic church with his Irish accent, and he says, "And Jesus was having the Last Supper. And he said, 'One of you will betray me.' So of course Matthew gets up, 'Is it I your brother? No.' Mark, 'Is it I your brother? No.' All the disciples. And the last one is Judas. And Judas gets up with his British accent and says, 'I said, old chap, is it I?'" And I want you to know, I'm Jewish. Because I'm Jewish, I love Protestants, I love Catholics, I love every human being, and I love Muslims too. I have nothing against the Muslims. I love the Muslims, they're good people. The war that we are seeing today in the Middle East, in Syria, in Iraq, and I know I shouldn't be dating the talk tonight because hopefully people will be listening, as Christine Dark said, in 6 months or a year or so. But 3 very important things are happening this week, and they have to be mentioned, and they will be radiating into what's going to be happening for the next 4 or 5 years. Tonight we have the debate between Trump and I'm going to talk about that too. Trump and what's her name, Hillary, and we have also the beginning, hopefully, of the end of the ISIS occupation of Mosul in Iraq. This could take months also. The American elections are November 8th. And the third thing is the UNESCO decision, the most outrageous decision, that the Jews have absolutely no claim to Jerusalem. And I don't know how many people here know that I'm working to form a Judeo-Christian political party to run for the Knesset. And I have to tell you that people are wondering, especially Christine, what's going on here. My lawyer, Caleb Myers, you know Caleb Myers, we submitted a list of 100 signatures plus 100 signatures, and we have the money, and the Israeli government was playing kind of games with us. And they said, "Avi, we see it's taken you 11 years to get 100 signatures." And really, it took me 11 years to get 100 signatures. Well, it's not written in any book, but we are telling you right now, we are rejecting your list because we will not accept any list where the signatures are more than 6 months old. So as soon as the holidays are over on Tuesday, Caleb Myers and his other lawyers and I are going to have to redo the 100 signatures, which we will do in a couple of weeks. We have more people, including Arabic-speaking Christians, who have now joined my party. I don't want... Glory to God. And I am committed to traveling to the States in January, so I want this baby born within 6 months, meaning by December. The Judeo-Christian Bible Block Party will be a fact, God willing, in 2 months. And my book on the back table, one of the 7 books, talks about the Bible Block Party. But the reason I'm starting with this is because I had a meeting 10 years ago with the Catholic Archbishop, the Vatican Archbishop, Ambassador to Israel, Archbishop Pietro Sambi. I don't know if anyone heard of Pietro Sambi. And I called him and I said, "I want to meet with you. I'm forming a Judeo-Christian party." And the Vatican has to know, because half our Christians are Catholic and half our Christians are Russian Greek Orthodox. And unfortunately, we don't have any WASPy Christians yet, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant Christians yet. But you all know that very soon there will be millions of Christians moving to Israel. How many people know that? And I'll talk about that more towards the end. But anyway, I said, you're the ambassador of the Vatican, and I wanted you to know about this. He said, I have only 5 minutes for you. I said, 5 minutes is fine. I just want to give you my books, CDs, DVDs, review them, send them to the Vatican, which he did. And when I met him, the 5 minutes became an hour. And he said to me, he got very excited, and he said to me, you know, I have to tell you something. I, as the Vatican ambassador to Israel, I have to meet with the Jews, I have to meet with the Christian denominations, I have to meet with the Muslims. The Muslims are all represented by a group called the Waqf, W-A-Q-F. Waqf is the trusteeship, and they're in charge of the Har HaBayit, or Temple Mount. And they cornered me. And they said, you have to tell us, do you believe that really there was a temple on the Temple Mount? Because these Jews have a wild imagination. And we all know, we Muslims know there was never a temple on the Temple Mount. And, you know, I have to tell you, I have at home a tour guide pamphlet issued by the Waqf in 1925. And it talks about this for sure was the place of Herod's temple and Solomon's temple, and Jesus was there. Yasser Arafat and Ahmed Shukeri founded the PLO in 1964. Now, I moved to Israel in 1968. 1962, I found here in the Old City, I found a 1962 Waqf publication talking about the Temple Mount. I still have it. I can show it to you. That the temple was there. After 1964, there's something called revisionism, where the Muslims are saying, guess what? There was never a temple. You know, laughing in the face of history. Anyway, so the Waqf says to the Catholic ambassador, what do you say? Was there a temple or wasn't there? So, you know, he's not there for polemics. He's there to be the conduit of information between Rome and the Holy Land. And he said, well, the Vatican loves the Arabs and the Muslims. I said, we know all that stuff. You're a man of God. You're not going to get out of this. You're going to answer us. Was there a temple or was there not a temple? And he said, well, listen, if there was no temple, where did Jesus overturn the money changers' tables? If there was no temple, where did Jesus have his bar mitzvah? Remember when he was 12 years old? Remember Left Behind? And I'm not talking about Tim LaHaye either. And how many people heard of Hanukkah? Well, it appears in John 10, verse 22. Jesus visited the temple on Hanukkah. Where were the apostles? At the temple. So Archbishop Sambi said to the Muslims, he says, listen, with all due respect, if there was no temple, then the whole New Testament is out the window too. And he said, any attack on the Old Testament is an attack on the New Testament.
Yes, amen.
And any attack on Judaism is an attack on Christianity. And I want you to know that all along my message has been exactly this, that the Jews and the Christians have to stop hating each other, we have to start loving each other, and whether we like it or not, kicking, screaming, and scratching, the Jews and the Christians will be coming together in these days. Now, the reason I told you the joke about Archbishop O'Malley, you know, I have to tell you, I've been in 1,000 churches. I've been all over the world. And by the way, for those of you who may be interested, I'm flying to the UK on the 11th of November, and I'm there till the 12th, and I'll be in Liverpool, and I'll be in Milton Keynes, and I'll be in Hitchin, and I'll be in Cambridge, I'll be in London. If anyone wants me in their church, I haven't gotten the ticket yet, but I'm available. But you gotta let me know real fast so I can, not have to change tickets when I'm in the UK. Anyway, so when I'm in Texas, and Texas, there are a lot of what they call Tex-Mex. The Latino Mexicans who became Texans. They're Americans. They've been many generations in the United States. And I spoke in places like Brownsville, Texas, and McAllen, all these places right on the border there with Mexico. And a very large percentage of these churches are Latinos. And I preach in Spanish too. Spanish is actually my mother tongue. So I get along very well in these churches. And when I was in the Protestant churches, I saw certain faces, I recognized them, we became friends. Then I went to the Catholic church down the street, and all the Protestants came to the Catholic church to hear me. And it turns out a lot of the people in the Protestant churches were Catholics coming to hear me. And I love it. I'm very glad to see that the Catholics and the Protestants have stopped killing each other. Now, I'm not saying this just to be romantic and to be kumbaya with everyone. The war that we are seeing in the Middle East now is a war. You know, the Catholics and the Protestants were fighting each other for 300 years. This is a horrible time, wars of Reformation. But the wars are over, praise God. But the wars between the Sunnis and the Shiites have been going on for 1,400 years. And you need to pray for them. You need to pray for them because there's no forgiveness in Islam. And you know what the whole fight is about? It's about, is this guy the one who's going to follow Muhammad, or is that guy the guy who's going to follow Muhammad? That's all it is. The Shiites are the dynasty, and the Sunnis are the lieutenants. And they're killing each other and killing each other for 1,400 years. Now, and there's no end. There's one of three possibilities. Either the Shiites kill the Sunnis, or the Sunnis kill the Shiites, or the Messiah shows up and then there's no more Islam. Then there'll be peace on earth. Because as long as you have Islam, you have the Sunnis and Shiites fighting each other. And I don't want anyone to think that I don't love the Muslims. I love the Muslims, and I cry for every Muslim who dies. And they're killing each other. You know what they're doing. I don't have to tell you what they're doing. Now, we're watching what's happening in Mosul. Mosul, Iraq. And I don't know if you know this or not, but Mosul was a city that had Christians and had Shiites and had Kurds and had all kinds of people. When ISIS took over, today Mosul is only a Sunni city. Everyone else has been killed or kicked out or fled. Who's going to liberate Mosul? The Shiites. Do you know what the Shiites are going to do? They're going to kill everybody. And you know, we have elections in America coming up. And America's a crazy country. You know, America, you have Democrats and Republicans. And they attack each other, and they're horrible to each other, and then it's like a baseball game. Or in England, you'd probably say football, you know, soccer, you know. And then the game's over, whoever wins, wins, and then we all go out to the pub. The Americans go out, and it's over. Not in the Middle East. In the Middle East, when there's a war between groups, whoever wins has to kill everybody else and stay in power. It's all about killing. Judeo-Christian Western civilization and democracy, there's something there called fair play. I don't know how fair, but at least nobody kills each other. Not in Israel, not in America, not in the UK, not in Europe. Huh? Okay, so, but what we see happening now is that we see the Iranians and the Shiites and the Russians working very hard to destroy ISIS, which is a very, very good thing for all of us. We see the Turks, who are Sunnis, coming in also to Mosul. And the Iraqi government doesn't like it. You know why? Because the Iraqi government is Shiite. And the Turks are Sunnis. And what I want to say here, and because most of you guys are Brits, you'll understand what I'm saying. World War II, and don't be offended that I say this, the best soldiers in World War II were the Nazis. The Germans were the best soldiers. But the Germans lost, not only because they were wrong, and not only because the Brits and the Americans and the Allies were the good guys and we had our backs against the wall and we defeated the Germans. The Germans were outmanned and outproduced. When they attacked Russia, big mistake, the Russians lost 10 Russian soldiers for every German soldier. Guess what? Tomorrow, no more Germans. That's what happened. The Russians came in, and no matter what, in the end, the Germans ran out of soldiers. Same with the Japanese. The Allies, the US, Britain, and the Allies outproduced the Nazi Axis. Are you with me?
Yes.
Today, the situation is as follows. I'm trying to oversimplify because we just don't have 20 hours to review all this. Sunni Islam is 85% of Islam. The Shiites are 15%. And no matter how much money Obama gives to the Iranians, he's just giving them enough rope to hang themselves. And I have news for you. I'm a Sovietologist. I don't think Putin is going to last very long. The Russian economy is not doing well. Russians are good people like any other people. They want to join the European Union. And the oligarchs in Russia are all fighting to see who's going to take over after Putin is gone. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say, we don't want to hear about Sunnis and Shiites. We want to hear about European Union and have a better standard of living. So, who are the Sunnis? The Sunnis are Saudi Arabia. And I want you to know, Saudi Arabia is a country of 17 million Sunnis and 2 million Shiites. So you don't count the Shiites because they're suppressed. 17 million Sunnis control the United States of America. And now the Sunnis are pouring into the United States. They've been pouring into the United States for 30, 40 years. I've been following it from day one. America, which used to be the greatest Christian country on earth, forgive me, British. America was the greatest Christian country on earth. And today, America is becoming a Muslim country under a Muslim president, Obama. How many people think that Obama is a Muslim? Okay, I can spend an hour with information that my wife picked up as an intelligence gatherer for the Israeli government. He's a Muslim. And he's doing everything he can to Islamize America, because if you make America Muslim, all the other countries of the world have to become Muslim. So the Saudis back the Sunnis, because they're Sunnis. There is no difference between ISIS and the Saudis. The Americans back, I don't want to say ISIS, they back their specific allies in Syria. The problem is when the Americans give these specific allies armaments, they're handed over to ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda and other groups. What are these groups doing? They're killing the Christians, they're killing the Kurds, they're killing the Yazidis, and they're killing the Shiites. If you ask any good Sunni Muslim who's fighting these wars, the bottom line is to kill everyone who's not a Sunni. And even within the Sunnis, there are those Sunnis who are treasonous by working with Bashar al-Assad and the Christians and the Kurds and the Yazidis and the Druze. They will have to be killed. So let me tell you a little story. I don't know if I did this in April in Passover. My wife and I are a very romantic couple. And we have satellite TV. So we pick up 1,300 Arabic stations. And my wife and I, instead of going to Blockbusters or Netflix, I don't know in England what you have at the movies, you know, but we watch Arabic news. Very romantic. Anyway, so there was this Jordanian comedian, and he did a skit. He got a death sentence from ISIS. What was the skit? He was pretending to be an ISIS guard at a checkpoint. Did anyone hear this before? No? And a car pulls up. And the car's from Lebanon. And seated in the car were 4 men. A Sunni, a Shiite, a Druze, and a Christian. Okay, because in Lebanon, the story of Lebanon is that everybody gets along. It's the Switzerland of the Middle East. So the ISIS guard says, okay guys, welcome to ISIS land. Where are you from? Lebanon. Oh, really? You're from Lebanon? How interesting. And he pulls out his machine gun, he goes, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta, and he kills all of them. Now, why does he kill everyone? Well, obviously, the Druze have to die because the greatest of the prophets is Jethro. You all know that the Druze are descended from Jethro. The Shiites have to die because the Shiites have to die, because they're the great enemy of the Sunnis. The Christians have to die because of Jesus Christ. And the Sunnis were in the car, the Sunni was in the car, he has to die because he's a traitor, he works with these 3 infidel groups. So basically, all of Lebanon has to be destroyed by ISIS. Okay, who backs ISIS? The US, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, 85% of the Muslims. Who backs the Shiites? Russia. Remember, Russia is a country of 140 million. It's like Italy. Russia cannot outproduce the Americans and the British and NATO and the Europeans. Russia is going to be defeated. Iran eventually is going to be defeated. I don't want to say the Chinese will be defeated. I think the Chinese will make the right decision. They'll join the European Union. No, because the God of China is money. And all these Russians, the Russian people, they want to make money. They don't want, wars are over. And one of the things I wanted to share, and something also that you need to pray about, the world really cannot tolerate Russia under Putin. And I think you know this already. After World War II, the European Christians said, God is bad. All these wars, 2,000 years of wars in Europe, are because of God and religion and nationalism. So we of the European Union have decided that there will never again be a war in Europe, because why should white European Christians be killing each other? It's crazy. And to their credit, there has not been any more war between Christians in the European Union. So Europe has decided God is bad. Religion is bad. Nationalism is bad. What's Russia? It's a religious nationalist Orthodox country. Who else is religious nationalist? Israel! Israel is Jewish and nationalist and religious. This cannot be tolerated. You got the idea of the Armageddon now? All the nations united against Israel? And the UNESCO decision this week saying that the Jews have no right to the Temple Mount of Jerusalem. If I were a Christian, I'd be up in arms. Because if you destroy the Jewish link to Jerusalem, you destroy the Christian link to Jerusalem. Where is the Pope? Why is it that the ambassador of the Vatican spoke to me and said, any attack on Judaism is an attack on Christianity? Why doesn't the Pope come out and say it? Because Jerusalem belongs to all those who believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which is Catholics and Protestants. And Russia voted against Israel. Russia is supposed to be Russian Orthodox, Christian. Russia has its own war with the Sunnis. So I'm asking myself these questions. And why is Trump so hated in the American media? Forget about all the scandalous stuff. Trump represents the true America. Trump represents Christian nationalist America. And that's why I support Trump. And what Hillary and her group of people are doing is they're linking up with the European globalists to say that God is bad, religion is bad, Christianity is bad, and don't worry about Judaism. Because the Jews in America are either going to move to Israel very soon or be killed by the Muslims who are pouring in the millions into the US, Canada, the Latino countries, England, Europe. The Jews, you know, already leaving France. And there's a reticence. I spoke in a few Jewish synagogues in Manchester and in London. They're afraid to have me. And they said to me, we are outnumbered by the Pakistanis 8-1 here in this neighborhood. And if you speak about Islam, you can be causing us a lot of trouble. And what I'm saying is what Jabotinsky said in 1920. How many people heard of Zev Jabotinsky? Who served, by the way, in the British Army in World War I. He said, either liquidate the diaspora or the diaspora will liquidate you. And his worst enemy were the Jewish rabbis in Europe. Because the Jewish rabbis were saying, firstly, the Germans would never do that to us. Because the Germans in World War I were very nice to the Jews. And we lost 6 million Jews because the rabbis said to the Jews, don't go, stay here, it'll never happen. And today in America, or in England, or Canada, or wherever, the synagogues don't want to hear what I'm saying. Liquidate the diaspora, or the diaspora will liquidate you. Why am I forming a Judeo-Christian party? Because there are 6 million Jews who either leave America and come home or get killed by the terrorists. Now, you know, we hate the Christians until we marry the Christians. In America, the intermarriage rate with Christians is 80%. How many people know 80%? 80%. For 100 Jews, you're going to have 80 Christian spouses. So when the Jew is going to get killed, the Christian spouse is going to get killed together with the Jewish spouse. So we are expecting, in my opinion, 10 million immigrants to the land of Israel, and it could happen overnight. Because Al-Qaeda has it's in my book, my red book from 1999. Actually, the book came out in 2003, but when I was in Canada, in Edmonton, Canada, I received in an Orthodox Jewish congregation a testimony from a Christian woman that the Muslims will receive orders to attack every Jew and Christian spouse and every pastor that loves Israel, every Messianic, all have to be killed. This is 1999 when I received it. This is before ISIS. ISIS might be defeated in Mosul, but ISIS is everywhere. And ISIS is not ISIS. ISIS is Al-Qaeda, ISIS is Jabhat al-Nusra, ISIS is all these crazy groups, all the same thing. How many people know that I'm a convicted criminal? How many people know that I have a 3-year jail sentence in Switzerland? Why? Because I said that Allah is the devil, and Islam is a criminal psychosis bent on the destruction of the human race. Doesn't matter how you call the organization. The bottom line is to kill the Jews, to kill the Christians, to bring Sharia, to bring Islam. And I mean, if the Christians don't wake up, forget about the Jews. If the Christians don't wake up, it's the end of human civilization. It'll be the end of the human race. And so I'm a Jew who goes to the churches, and I call for a Christian revival. Because the only thing that can save the world is a Christian revival. This is not even about Israel. This is not even about the Jews. The Jews are like the canary in the cage when the miner goes into the mine. This is about the miner. This is about you people. And it involves UK, it involves all of Europe, US, Canada, it involves Israel. So Trump is hated because Trump represents what Putin represents, what Israel represents. A religious, nationalist country based on the foundations of its forefathers and the Bible. And this is my message. When I was with you in Passover in April, I spoke about the Druze. Now, how many people here know who the Druze are? D-R-U-Z-E. Now, the Druze are a very interesting group. And they're our cousins, just like the Arabs, excuse me, are descended from Ishmael. And so the Druze are descended from Jethro. Who is Jethro? The high priest of Midian. Midian was also one of the sons of Abraham. So the Druze are our cousins also. And the Druze are divided up into 4 countries: Israel, Lebanon, Jordan, Syria. And they're faithful to the countries in which they live. And today there's a problem. We have 100,000 Druze. In the Golan Heights, there are 30,000 Druze. And on the mountain of the Druze, about 20, 30 miles away in South Syria, there are 700,000 Druze, and they're all going to be slaughtered by ISIS and Jabhat al-Nusra and Al-Qaeda because they don't believe in Muhammad as the greatest of the prophets. And the Druze are saying to Netanyahu, I spoke about this 6 months ago, that Israel has to go in and rescue them. Or at least let the Druze officers and soldiers in the IDF go voluntarily. But the Israeli government cannot agree to something so easily like this because all of a sudden our population will grow by 700,000 non-Jews. Of course, if we get 16 million Jews and Christians, there's 10 million Jews and Christians in the West, so what's 700,000 Druze joining us do? You want to know something? When the Druze come to Israel, say, help save our lives, otherwise we're going to be in a Holocaust, the Christians in Syria, who are 2 million, are going to come and say, come and save us too. Thank you. So, we're living in a very volatile time. This story with the Druze broke a year ago, in the summer of 2015. In October 2015, who came into the picture? The Russians. The Russians came in because they are Orthodox Christians, and they came in to protect their Orthodox Christians and Catholics in Syria, because America today is behind the Sunni Muslims who are killing the Christians. What drives me crazy is that the United States, Canada, Britain, European Union are all defending the Sunnis who are killing the Christians. And so Russia came in October. All of a sudden the Druze are quiet, the Christians are quiet. But I go back to the World War II. The Nazis were defeated because they were outmanned and outproduced. Today, the Russians and the Shiites and the Christians are outmanned and outproduced. The United States is choosing to side, and Europe is choosing to side with the Sunnis. And the Saudis are choosing to help kill Christians, and again, nobody's addressing it. Until now, Israel has been very fortunate. Israel has been left alone. I always used to speak, I've been speaking to Christian churches 26 years. I mean, if you look to Google search and Facebook, I have 47, YouTubes, they're all free. Israel, I always used to say, was like a flower in the desert. Today I say Israel is like a flower in the middle of a forest fire. Because you have ISIS and all these terrorist groups in Sinai and all around us. And I said also, if you remember, that Jordan and Saudi Arabia are going to fall to ISIS. So even if Mosul falls, 92% of Saudi Arabia supports ISIS. 80% of Jordan supports ISIS. All you need is a bullet to kill the king of Saudi Arabia or the king of Jordan. And a lot of generals and a lot of Arabic tribes have decided to throw their fate, their destiny in with the fanatic Islamic terrorists. So what I see happening is eventually Russia pulling out, Russia joining the European Union, because people want a good lifestyle, good standard of living. Who cares about religion? Who cares about God? Who cares about the Christians in the Middle East? And in the end, the only one who's going to care about the Christians in the Middle East is going to be Israel. I don't know if you can feel where I'm going with this. The fanatic Sunnis have to kill everybody in Lebanon. The fanatic Sunnis have to kill everybody in Syria. And if Iran thinks it's going to have a walkover in Mosul, the Turks are going to fight them. And I know this is not the forum for this. Turkey is 44% Turkish. Turkey is 31% Shiite, backed by Iran. 25% Kurdish. And Iran has said to Turkey, if you mess with Bashar al-Assad and with the Shiites, we're going to bring down Turkey. Turkey's going to explode. They're going to have civil war in Turkey. Iran is in not much better situation. Iran is 50% Parsi, Persian, and 50% minorities. And the minorities in Iran are very restive. So I'm predicting that God is going to overturn the Islamic tables. Turkey, Iran, and Israel will have no choice. Israel doesn't want to go in, but Israel's going to have to go into Lebanon and Syria, Jordan and Saudi Arabia. Israel's borders are going to reach the borders that God said in Deuteronomy 11. Do we want it? No, we don't want it. The Jews are the most anti-fascist people in the world. The Jews don't want war. You know the greatest enemy of Israeli territorial expansionism is the Jewish mother. The Jewish mother wants her kids not farther away than 15 minutes. Friday night, they got to be on time for Friday night dinner. You know, we have a joke. What's the difference between a Polish Jewish mother and a Doberman Pinscher? The Doberman Pinscher eventually lets go. What Jewish mother wants her kids to be living in Damascus or Beirut or in Jordan or in Saudi Arabia? But all these things are going to come back to us.
As long as they are lawyers or dentists.
What?
As long as they are lawyers or dentists.
As long as they're lawyers or dentists. Not even then. Not even the mother. In Florida, there's a term. You know, Florida, they have all these retired people with golf carts. They live in golf. So a golf carts drive away. That's the Florida version. You know, we're always complaining. I have two sons. One lives half an hour away. The other one, he lives an hour away driving. So it's too much, you know. That's the Israeli reality. Wait till 10 million people come home and we become a country of 16 million people. And you're going to have 4 million Christians coming. And we're going to have, as we take these lands, we're going to have Druze. We're going to have Christians. We're going to have all these minorities which have been slaughtered by the Sunnis. It's either we win together with all these minorities, or the Sunnis kill everybody. And then after they kill everybody, what do? They kill each other. So, you know, I have to tell you a joke. It's one of the reasons I got my jail sentence in Switzerland. And I say it like this, that in Islam, and this is in the Hadith. Hadith is not the Quran. Hadith is another tradition. It says on the Day of Judgment, there will be a final battle, and every Jew must be killed. Every Muslim believes this. If you find a Muslim who says, I don't believe it, he's not a Muslim, or she's not a Muslim. It says there will be a final battle, Jews will hide behind rocks and trees, and on that day, Allah will give mouths to the rocks and trees, and they will call out, O Muslim pursuers, there's a Jew here hiding, come and kill him. Okay. Now you might say as Christians, well, that's for the Jews. The problem is, how many people know that Christians are Jews? In Islam, Christians are Jews. We're the people of the book. Jesus Christ, according to the Hadith, is coming back as an Arabic-speaking Muslim warrior, and he's going to kill the Antichrist, who is a Jew. And then after he kills the Antichrist, he's going to go up to Jerusalem, to the Temple Mount, pray with 400,000 Muslims, then come down, break the crosses, destroy the churches of the Christians, and then on that day of judgment, all the Jews and Christians will have their throats personally slit by Jesus Christ the Muslim. Every Muslim believes this. Ask any Muslim, just carefully, because it could provoke some violence there. Or they might say, wow, you're so smart. Where did you know that from? Say, Avi Lipkin spoke to us. They know who I am. I mean, I got a jail sentence for telling this joke. So anyway, they killed the Jews on what day? Saturday. They killed the Christians on what day? Sunday. The Hindus, the Buddhists, and the blacks in Africa, any day. And then they kill each other. The Sunnis kill the Shiites kill the Sunnis, the Sunnis kill the Sunnis, the Shiites kill the Shiites. And guess what? Satan's perfect plan. Every human being dies. Islam is not a religion. It is a criminal psychosis based on the destruction of the human race, the entire human race. Do you understand why I got a 3-year jail sentence? To say in Switzerland? But you know what people are saying to me, Avi, in Switzerland? You deserve a medal from the Swiss people. Because the Swiss people woke up. I don't know if you know what's going on in Switzerland. Switzerland is having a great Christian revival. They're stopping all this nonsense. So I'm glad to be part of that. And I want you to know it's going to happen in England, it's going to happen in Holland, it's going to happen in many countries in Europe. And the problem, I mean, it's already happening. But all I'm saying is that we have an overall picture here of people who are hated by what we call the one world government. That's going to be somebody like Netanyahu, somebody like Putin, somebody like Trump. It's not because they have the same ideology, it's just that they are loyal to the Bible, loyal to God's teaching. So you're going to ask me, what's happening? Current events. And I'm following very carefully. You know, we have here and there what they call the terrorism of the individuals. You know, where some young man or some young woman comes and stabs or comes with it. But you know, I think in the inner cities of the United States or even the UK, more people die every night. I mean, in Chicago, I think 100, 200 people die every night from shooting each other. And I don't know if you know this, in Chicago, it's a gun-free zone. They have some of the toughest gun laws. But the bad guys always have guns. The terrorists always have guns. But what we're seeing with the Palestinians, forgive me for saying it, it's not really terrorism. It's crime, and it's Islamic motivated and everything. One of the reasons that we don't see a major rebellion until now with the Palestinians is because Obama and the West said to the Palestinians, leave it to us. How many people know that the French have already come out with a plan to force peace on Israel and the Palestinians, which means basically Israel surrendering? How many people know that? Yeah. Now, I don't know who's going to win the elections in the United States. It doesn't really matter. It does matter, but 8th of November, as soon as the elections are over, President Obama has 60 days to join the French, join the United Nations, and this UNESCO decision is it has no value in itself. But together with the Security Council and other organizations, there's going to be a tremendous attack against Israel. That's why the Palestinians are quiet. The Palestinians have been told, don't attack Israel. We're going to do it for you. So one of the things we know that's going to happen is that the Palestinians are planning to start an intifada. In other words, start a rebellion against Israel. A very, very tough rebellion of a few days. hoping, knowing that the world is going to convene in the United Nations and in a force, an expeditionary force of NATO in the West is going to attack Israel. The American ambassador to the United Nations, and this requires a lot of prayer, her name is Samantha Powers. Samantha Powers wrote a position paper 20 years ago for the Clinton administration about how Israel has to be attacked by the West. Israel has to be attacked, a Palestinian state has to be formed according to the June 5th, 67 borders, which can never happen. Israel will never agree to the June 5th, 1967 borders. This will be a war of totality. Gog and Magog, Otov Vavo, as we say in Hebrew, complete anarchy. When this happens, I'm talking about 2 months from now, 2 months from now, that's when ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Jabhat al-Nusra, all these crazy Muslim organizations are going to start killing Jews and their Christian spouses, and the pro-Israel Christians and the Messianics are all going to be killed outside of Israel. And so we have to pray that God give us the victory over these terrorists, but we also have to pray that God's will be done on earth and in heaven. And God's will is to bring the Jews home and their Christian spouses. And so I predict we're going to see a tremendous immigration to the land of Israel. Our borders are going to expand. Our population is going to expand. And I praise God that I have been chosen, together with you, to be one of the generation that is witnessing all these things happening in our time. And things are happening faster and faster and faster. We are in the times of the Messiah. And the Bible is being proven every day, more and more true. Archaeologically, we are proving the truth. I don't know, my son Aaron came out with 2 DVDs on the back table proving the veracity of the Bible, things that even the rabbis don't yet know, from archaeology. So the Bible is true. The faith of the Jews and Christians, which I call one faith, the faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is true. The Messiah, who is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew, is coming or returning soon. I don't know what soon is. It could be 10, 15 years or so. But meanwhile, we are living in the time, we call it the travails of birth.
Yes.
There's going to be a birthing very soon, but we are in the time now of the travails. Things don't look good. But if your house is okay with the Lord and you are ready, I don't want to say to move to Israel, but you're ready for what's coming, and you have to protect your countries, England or Ireland or wherever you're from in the US. We have to protect all our Christian countries. The way to protect is a Christian revival and bring the Jews home to the land that God has commanded them to come home. And so I want to thank all of you, and God bless you, and God bless Christine and Peter for all the work they're doing, and Bob Odell from Texas. Even Texans are here tonight. And by the way, you know the word jihad is a word from Texas? Jihad! Yes, questions and answers. Anyway, that's my message in short.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
2 questions.
You know what? Do me a favor, since we're taping. Come up and speak into the microphone.
Or repeat it. Just repeat the question.
Oh, sometimes some of these questions take about 10 minutes. So, yeah.
Question 1, what do you think of Brexit?
Yes.
And question number 2, if Obama's supporting ISIS, why is he sending American planes to bomb them?
Okay. Number 1, regarding Brexit, it hurts me that Britain would be leaving the European Union, but Britain has to leave the European Union to maintain its integrity and its sovereignty. And if you're worried about England losing business, then do more business with Israel. What was your second question?
If Obama is supporting
ISIS. Okay. Now let me go into something that I haven't spoken about.
What's the question on the...
Yes. The question is, if Obama supports ISIS, why is he bombing it? Okay. Now, I'm going to say a few things as a background. This is a long answer. Okay. My wife Rachel, I'm an American-born Jew, so I think, like I think like a British. I think like an American. I think like a Westerner. I met my wife in Israel. She came from Egypt at age 20. I was age 20. She thinks like a Muslim. I think like a Christian, because I was born and raised in a Christian America. She was born and raised in Islamic Egypt. Arabic is her mother tongue. She understands not only everything they say, she understands everything they don't say. In addition to the fact that my wife has what many women have, it's called ESP. My wife watches them and she knows exactly, looks in their eyes, that she knows what they're thinking. You know, there's a saying in Mexico that you're guilty until proven innocent. I'm married to Mexico. And, you know, men, when they lie to their women, they turn red. I turn red when I tell my wife the truth. She has that sense that when 30 years my wife is monitoring the Arabic language broadcasts for Kol Israel radio. And she has Obama exactly in her sights. She understands everything about Obama. January 19th, 2010, this is before the Arab Spring, my wife was watching Cairo TV, Channel 3. And there was a panel discussion with Muslim Brotherhood. This is while Mubarak was still president. Abu Ghait was the foreign minister. And the Muslim Brotherhood was attacking Abu Ghait on TV, saying, you should break the peace agreement with Israel, Egypt should destroy Israel, and you are all kafir, you're all infidels in the government because you don't attack Israel. They're going on and on and on. So Abu Ghait, the foreign minister, when they were finished, said, are you guys finished? Can I talk? Okay. First thing I want to tell you something. You Muslim Brotherhood people are all little babies. You have no idea how to run a government, and if God forbid you win in the elections, you're going to destroy Egypt. And that's exactly what happened. General al-Sisi came in to save Egypt from these crazy Muslim brothers. They were destroying Egypt. And by the way, the peace agreement today with Egypt is stronger now than ever. Sisi is an ally of Israel, at least, you know, it's better than it's ever been. So Abu Ghait said to the Muslim Brotherhood people, I want to calm you guys down. When President Obama visited Cairo in 2009, right after his inauguration, I had a one-on-one with him. And he said to me, I want you to know, I swear I'm a Muslim, Sunni Muslim. My father from Kenya was a Sunni Muslim. If your father's a Sunni Muslim, what are you? Sunni Muslim. His stepfather in Indonesia, Sunni Muslim. He was raised in a mosque and in a madrasa till age 11 as a Sunni Muslim. How many people remember the name of Francis Xavier in the Catholic Church? Francis Xavier said, give me a child until 10, I'll make him a man. Obama was made a Muslim man until age 11. It's in his book in Indonesia. He said, I've got Obamacare problems and I've got economic problems to deal with. This is 2009. America's coming out of this horrible collapse of the economy. But I swear, I will show the Muslim world what I'm going to do to destroy Israel. This is what my wife picked up. Bibi got it. Bibi got the information. My wife picked up broadcasts that the Saudis are saying, Obama is our slave. How many people saw the picture of Obama bending over to the King of Saudi Arabia? Look at it again. Sarkozy of France, look at his eyes. He's looking down at Obama kissing the hand of the King of Saudi Arabia because they're co-religionists. And he, as Farrakhan, you ever hear of Louis Farrakhan, the black Muslims? He was selected before he was elected. This guy has been groomed for the job. And the agenda, which put in Clinton and put in George W. Bush and put in Obama, all these people are chosen for a certain reason. And my wife picked up a broadcast. Obama has 3 commands. Command number 1, destroy Iran, Shiite Iran. I'm going to explain this in a moment. Destroy Israel, Jewish Israel, and destroy Christian America. These are the 3 commands. Now, I don't know if you know this or not, but there's this agreement now with Iran, signed by the Western powers. Yes. And U.S. has handed over $150 billion that were frozen in American accounts. Boeing is now making a deal for billions of dollars with Iran. A lot of things economically are happening, very important. Articles 75 and 76 of the agreement say that the United States is going to hand over to Iran hydrogen bomb technology. Now, the energy for peace that we keep hearing about is atomic. It's fission. Hydrogen is fusion. There is no peaceful application for the hydrogen bomb. The reason Obama is handing the hydrogen bomb to Iran is so that it be dropped on Israel. Now, on the other hand, Obama has given Israel quite a bit of weaponries. I don't know if you know, just northeast of Ben Gurion Airport, there is a storage facility started by Clinton. Clinton put in $400 million worth of ammunition, war material. Obama tripled it. It's now 1.2 billion, as far as I know, the latest report I have. So America is giving Israel a lot of weaponries. America just signed a 10-year agreement with Israel, which is over $30 billion. What I think Obama wants is that Iran and Israel go to war against each other. Iran and Israel destroy each other. And that way, he's killed two birds with one stone. So on the surface, yes, he's bombing ISIS. But on the other hand, he's helping other fanatic Sunni groups who in the end, they're all believing the same thing. That Christians and Jews have to die. Hindus and Buddhists have to die. Blacks have to die. And if you're a Sunni, the Shiites have to kill you. If you're a Shiite, the Sunnis have to kill you. I'm telling you, every human being has to die. So, according to this Islamic insanity. So, Obama is like, with a little pinky, dropping a few bombs here and there. The Russians are doing a very drastic job. But like I said before, I don't think the Russians are going to last very much longer. There's a lot of resentment in Russia against Putin. The Russian people want to live. I understand them. There are a lot of people in Russia that are very angry about the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. The Ukrainians want to be part of the EU. A lot of the Russians want to be part of the EU. This whole idea of war is over. The European Union has taught us the wars are over. So it's like going back to the Tsarist period where, Putin wants to show he's a Tsarist. I think at some stage there's going to be some kind of a oligarch in the Russian economy with the backing of the US and the Europeans who are going to kill Putin. And I'm not going to be happy about it because I actually prefer Russia the way it is now. People are talking I don't know how many of you are getting the emails I'm getting. Every other email is talking about World War III. I don't believe it. But let me tell you something else also. I have a friend, I don't want to say a friend, I don't even remember who she is, but a lady who's about my age. I'm almost 68. Her father retired in the early 1980s from Star Wars. Star Wars under Reagan? Very, very shoo-shoo, silent. She said, we can destroy Russia, US can destroy Russia in 24 hours. And she said to me, it breaks my heart to see Russian boys and girls and American boys and girls and British boys and girls fighting with sticks and stones when in the end there's going to be such a cataclysm of nuclear weapons. And there are other weapons which are not nuclear that can also do the job. And even China, they make a lot of, bravado. Chinese are also going to be dealt with. I travel all over the US. I go to churches. I don't even remember who the people are or what churches I was in, but there are some very high-level people who go to church and they're repenting for the sins of the fathers. And I'm the last person in the world who wants to see these wars happening. But the point is, when the world comes down on Israel after November, then the Palestinians and the Arab world will come down on Israel and go against the Jews and Christians outside of Israel. And that's when the Jews and Christians come home. This is how I see the hand of God moving everything. And Israel's borders are going to expand. And anybody who tries to tamper with Jerusalem will be tampering with a terrible stone, burdensome stone. The great thing is God is in control. And we know who wins. But you have to be aware that there are a lot of very strong powers, what they call the military-industrial complex, not only in the US, in Europe, and everybody wants to play with their new toys, these new weapons of mass destruction. And in a way, I kind of feel bad for the Arabs because the Westerners, the Americans, the Brits, the Europeans are egging on the Sunnis. The Shiites are being egged on by the Russians. They're killing each other. And it could be that they're the proxies, you know, for the European powers. They see the Europeans and the Americans and the Russians as their proxies. And everybody's fighting everyone. And this whole World War III is so unneeded. It's stupid. And I don't know, I pray for the whole world. I feel bad for all of us, but I pray especially for Israel because we are here. And I have a feeling that there are going to be a lot of Jews and Christians coming home. But, so to answer your question in one sentence, I think that Obama is tickling ISIS. He's not really attacking ISIS. Yes?
Where does North Korea fit in?
Huh? North Korea really is an anomaly. I mean, the Chinese don't even like them. You know, the Chinese build bridges over the Yalu River to go into North Korea, and they're bridges to nowhere because the North Koreans were supposed to develop, like free trade zones on the Chinese border. I mean, the Chinese are business people. They don't understand nonsense. The ideology of the North Korean regime is nonsense. And so the Chinese are very upset, but the Chinese are not going to start fooling around with North Korea if North Korea has nuclear weapons and China's right next door. Theoretically, the Russians and the Chinese could overthrow Kim Jong-il and bring in another kind of communist regime, but not such a crazy regime. The communists today are the greatest capitalists.
Avi,
Yes.
in the Bible, it talks about the nations.
Right.
And I believe the Hebrew word is goy or goyim.
Right.
What is the definition of goyim, and does it include Christians?
Yes. Okay. Well, that's a very good question. We've dealt with that before. It's a funny thing. When I met my wife on January 14th, 1970, at 2 in the afternoon on a bus in Jerusalem, and the first thing she asks me, "You're from America? You left your mom and dad and came here by yourself? Why?" I said, "Because the Goyim hate us." The Goyim are the Gentiles. How many people know the word Goyim? The Goyim are the Gentiles. So my wife said to me, "Goyim? Who are the Goyim?" I said, "The Christians." Because in America, in 1968, you were a Jew or you were a Goy. That's the way Jews talked about the Christians. So my wife said to me, "Not only are you crazy, but you also don't know anything." Why don't I know anything? She says, "Because Christians are not Gentiles." Are you listening? Christians are not Goyim. The Muslims are the Goyim. Muslims are great people, but they're pagans. The Goyim refers to the nations that were not at Mount Sinai at the giving of the Torah. Now, you might not have been at Mount Sinai, but if you're grafted into the Jews, you're grafted into Mount Sinai. Those people who do not believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they're the Goyim, they're the Gentiles. And one of the teachings I heard in one of the very first churches in Texas, in New Braunfels, that I heard, Pastor Don Duncan, and he said, when God says the nations of the islands, that refers to England, Ireland, North America, South America, Australia, New Zealand, of course the Greek islands too. But the nations of the islands, which today we know as the Anglo-Saxon nations. We do not have a problem with the nations of the islands. And so the Goyim is the United Nations. The United Nations represents 200 nations, represents 2/3 of the human race, which is not Christian. So the Jews and the Christians are the people of the book. We have the same God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We have the same Bible. And the Messiah, we all agree, is a Jew from Israel who speaks Hebrew. So the Christians believe in Jesus Christ, and the Jews believe in Chaim Yankel. You know who Chaim Yankel is? It's like Joe Schmo. We don't know who he is. When he shows up, how many people know it's a very famous Israeli joke. Israeli diplomats have to be very careful, because if there are Jews in where they're speaking and they say Jesus or something, Jews get very offended, very flustered. So the joke goes like this. The Mossad, you all know what the Mossad is, our secret service. They call the Prime Minister on his red phone and say, "Mr. Prime Minister, we have a dilemma." What's the dilemma? Messiah is here now, on the Mount of Olives. What do we do with him? So the prime minister has a dilemma because, the Orthodox are going to complain, and the Muslims are going to complain, and the communists are going to complain, and there's going to be a big fight in the Knesset. So he calls up Ben Gurion Airport. And, the commander of passport control is a little guy. He has, a hairy chest, doesn't shine his shoes, doesn't button his shirt, very sloppy. We Israelis are not like Marines, like British soldiers or, fancy uniforms. We're very sloppy with our uniforms. So the prime minister says, shine your shoes, button your shirt, look snappy, drive up to the Mount of Olives and go up to the Messiah and say, excuse me, sir, is this your first visit to the Holy Land? I heard that from Yoram Ettinger. And actually, this joke is confirmed. I'm going to give you a little slap in the face now. This joke, you should have me in your church. You could have a stomach ache because I just tell jokes the whole time. This is confirmed in the Gospel of John. Okay, how many people remember the Gospel of John? After the resurrection, Jesus is with his disciples 40 days. Nobody recognizes him. And he said, look at my hands, look at my feet. I agree with that, that's fine. I want to go up to the Mount of Olives with you guys together and say, can we check your hands, please? Even believers have scales on the rise, you know that? But the good news is, God forgives us and God does not give up on us. All we have to do is not to give up on God. And we know to whom the victory is at the end. Any other questions?
Only now I figured out why I had to go all the way down to Emmaus. It was airport, Ben Gurion Airport.
Yeah. Emmaus is in near Ben Gurion Airport. Yeah. By the way, I have to tell you a little story. This is very true. How many people heard of Shiloh? Did you go to Shiloh? Okay, so I have to tell you, I was born in 1949, and I was a stamp collector, still am, all my life. And in 1962, the U.S. government the U.S. Post Office issued a stamp commemorating battles of the Civil War. In 1862, it was 100 years, centenary. And there was a stamp, Battle of Shiloh, which happened in Tennessee in April 1862. And I was born and raised in the U.S. In 1962, I didn't know where Shiloh was. It's in the Bible, somewhere there in the Bible. Now, this is a very important point I'm making. Things that were buried under the ground and mentioned in the Bible, the Jewish Israeli archaeologists said, we don't believe anything we don't see. So there was a way of thinking, a concept called the minimalist concept, which said, if we haven't found it, if we haven't proven it, it didn't exist. Do you know what that means? It means the whole Bible is false until we prove it. Yeah. King David never existed, King Solomon never existed. I mean, this is, okay. So after the Six-Day War in 1967, this is 5 years later, the Jewish Israelis, come looking for Shiloh. They come looking for the biblical places. And there's actually a Christian town there called Kafr Sila. Sila in Greek or in Arabic is Shiloh. Because in Greek there's no SH. So Shiloh becomes Silo. And so archaeologists came in and they're digging around. There are 4 Greek churches. They went down 2 yards, 6 feet, and they found a mosaic in Greek in a Christian church which said, "May the Lord Jesus bless the people of Shiloh." Wow. Bingo! Did you see this mosaic when you went to Shiloh?
No.
Okay, so anyway,
It was covered up.
So anyway, the thing is, when there are rabbis, very ultra-Orthodox rabbis, who say, "May Jesus bless the people." Oh, no, God forbid, you shouldn't mention that name. But thanks to Jesus, we knew that was Shiloh.
Wow.
And that proves the veracity of the Bible. So let me explain. Who was born in Shiloh? The prophet Samuel. What did the prophet Samuel do? He anointed King Saul and King David. So if Samuel existed, Saul and David existed. The Ark of the Covenant was there for 369 years. Anyway, my son is producing a DVD on Shiloh, and he has 2 other DVDs on Bethel and on the giant footprints. Did you go to any of the giant footprints? This is so cutting edge, nobody knows about it yet. My son made a DVD about the footsteps. And what happened was, now I'm going out on a limb to say this, the Israelites, where were they 38 years during the Exodus? In Saudi Arabia. And Moses, okay, now don't laugh too hard and don't mock me for saying this, but when you know Hebrew, the Bible reads a little differently. And the Jews, as much as they don't like Christians, we follow the King James, which is full of mistranslations. So Moses says 6 times to Pharaoh, let my people go. But the first time is different than the others. He says in Hebrew, Shlach et ami sheyahogu li bamidbar. Okay, exactly. Sheyahogu li bamidbar means, in the King James is, that they shall celebrate the Lord. How do you say happy holiday in Hebrew? Chag Sameach. Chag is the same root as sheyahogu. So sheyahogu means to go around in circles in the desert. Now, my contention, and I speak about this in my yellow book, Return to Mecca, is that there were two religions in those days. You had, in the Middle East, you had the pyramid, the triangle of Pharaoh, and you had the cube of the black stone in Mecca, the Kaaba. You know the black stone in Mecca? Now, the black stone precedes Muhammad by 2,000 years. This was a pagan place. And when the Jews are commanded to put phylacteries on their forehead and on their arm, this is, in my opinion, a replica of the black stone. And we are leaving the triangle of slavery of Egypt and going to the freedom in the desert of the black stone, and to go around the circles around the black stone. And Jethro was the high priest of the black stone. And so the Israelites were in Saudi Arabia those years. This is why I speak so much about Saudi Arabia. What my son proves is that there were giant footprints built by the Israelites. This is before the temple in Jerusalem. This is about 1300 BC. And we found 6 of them. My son explains it in Footsteps. Even the rabbis don't know. The term in Hebrew, aliyah l'regel, does not mean going up by bus or by car to Jerusalem. What it means is going up to the foot. Because these giant feet were used as a procession, and the Israelites would go around in circles around the feet and make their sacrifices. This is so cutting edge. I'm telling you, even the rabbis don't know this yet. So it's you want to believe it, you want to reject it, it's up to you, but I'm just saying this is going to be the wave of the future. What we are doing, and what I'm very proud of my son, is that he is working with a band of archaeologists that are going against the conventional so-called wisdom of the archaeologists who don't believe in God and don't believe in the Bible. And every day, we are finding archaeologically all the proofs that the Bible really happened, that this is really true. And when we prove that the Bible is really true, yes, Jerusalem was there. Yes, the temple was there for the Jews and for the Christians. And all these people who deny the truth are eventually going to have to come before the throne and deal with, God's going to deal with them. So our job is to make it very clear to Jews and Christians and to anyone who will listen and watch and see the truth about the greatness of the land of Israel. Why did I tell you all this? What was the question? The question was, you asked it. Okay, anyway, so I'm just saying, by the way, one last thing I want to say. You think you're finished with Christine? You got to come every year to Israel. Because every year, every time you come to Israel, more things are discovered in archaeology. And then you go back to your homes as ambassadors for Israel. And Israel belongs to the Christians together with the Jews. Yes?
I have one question.
What was the last question? Okay, yes. Just shout. You have to be like my wife. Shout. Yes.
Fellowship that you're forming, Jews and Christians, or thing that you're forming.
I didn't hear the questions.
Political party you're forming, she's asking about.
About what?
The political party that you're
Yes.
Can you speak a little bit more and get anyone doing, or do you have specific
Okay, at this stage, the party is only limited to Israeli voters. Let me explain the numbers. You need, it used to be 80,000 votes, now you need 140,000 votes to get any political list into the Knesset. We have 33, 34 parties now registered, so most of the parties can never get into the Knesset because you have to have 140,000 votes. There has never been a Judeo-Christian party in Jerusalem, okay? Now, if we look to the end, and we see millions and millions of Jews and Christians coming home from the West, obviously there is room for a Judeo-Christian party in the Knesset. What we have today is 2% of our population is Arabic-speaking Christian, 6% is Russian, Ukrainian, Ethiopian, so that's 8%. 8% is about 300,000 votes. So theoretically, if we do our work properly, and if the Jewish spouses of the Christians come in, it's 14%. So, you know, we're talking possibly about 14, 15 members of Knesset out of 120. This is something which will take everyone completely by surprise. I've been preaching about this since 1998. I hired the services of Caleb Myers, who is a Messianic believer, and he is a lawyer. And he's been working with me 11 years on this. Like I said before, in 2 months from now, we are re-signing up everyone. We still have the $36,000 to register. That's the price of registering a party. And hopefully, by the end of December, the party is a reality. I don't know. We don't have really a budget. You know, a political party needs millions of dollars for radio, TV, and newspapers. We don't have that money. So I'll probably have to spend a lot of time going to home meetings in churches here in Israel to get all the Arabic-speaking and Russian-speaking people. By the way, just a little thing, my book on the back table, Israel's Bible Block, is in English. My information has to be translated into Russian, Arabic, and Hebrew. This, I think, is the only country in the world where when you campaign, you have to campaign in 4 languages.
Let's give the Lord praise.